the Selectmen's meeting for February 19th to order. First item on our agenda is public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment? There being none, review of the minutes. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we accept the minutes for February 5th, 2020 as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. The next item is tabled. There's no one here to represent this issue. The next item on our agenda is a common vic license hearing for 382 Water Street. We've received an application for a common vic license from MD Chow Herg DBA Convenience Plus to operate a retail convenience store at 382 Water Street in Clinton. Is the applicant here? Would you like to take a seat forward? Give us your name and address for the record and tell us a little bit about your request.
Sure. My name is MD Chaudhary, and me and my wife tried to open a convenience store in 382 Water Street. And I used to own a convenience store before. Last 2 years I sold my business, and now I'm just trying to get into the business again.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Yes, this is an existing business that you're buying. Is that what it is, or are you opening it in a new location?
No, it used to be Pam's deli
Pam.
shop.
Okay,
It's
all
been-
right, yeah, so you're buying Pam's. That's what
I'm just renting it. I'm not the landlord.
you're renting it.
Yes,
Okay.
renting, yes.
That was my question, thank you.
Any other questions? This is a public hearing, so is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Being none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition? There being none, the public hearing portion of this is closed. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the common victualer's license to the applicant.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Next item is, we have a request from the President of the Clinton Firefighters Union to be on the agenda. Captain Chamberlain?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Good evening, and honorable member of the Select Board, I thank you for having me tonight. And honestly, I'm very sorry that I have to be here tonight. I shouldn't have to, and I apologize to anybody else's time that I'm wasting by being here. All I'm looking for is answers from Mr. Ward or the town's lawyer. We're trying to wrap up our contract. This current one expires June 30th. We still have some questions that are being unanswered. And like I stated in my request for being here tonight, and again, when talking to Joyce on the phone Friday, I'm just looking for answers. All it's going to take is a simple email from either Mr. Ward, Mr. Anastopoulos with their answers. That's all we're looking for.
I was, how about a response from your own union's attorney? That's who has the information right now. Nick Anastasopoulos from my office emailed him last week regarding the whole issue with the drug language, which is the union's language, which now your council is attempting to change and has already been agreed to. He sent him an email, I think the end of last week, and as of today, there was no response. So we're waiting to hear back from the union's attorney.
Yeah, this is something I'm unaware of, and again, if Mr. Anastopoulos had concerns, he knows how to contact me, and I would contact.
In all due respect, my office deals with the union's council. We don't deal directly with you or any members of the union. We can't. We deal with the union's council. Nick Anastasopoulos has been corresponding with the union's council, and right now, he has not heard back from the union's council. So, he cannot respond directly to you, because the union is represented by an attorney. And he can't. And he sent him an email the end of last week, and as of today, there has been no response from your attorney. So that's all I can tell you.
I haven't heard either, and again, you were attached to one of those emails, and I know you represent the town, but again, if you had this information, you could have forwarded it to me, and again, I wouldn't be wasting the time of the select board, I wouldn't be wasting their time. I'm looking for answers, so if you want to talk about respect,
No, but
by you guys not answering us, that is the sign of
You have
disrespect.
an attorney who represents you. That's who we are corresponding with. We're
Yeah.
corresponding with the union's attorney. We have corresponded with him. But let me ask you this. Have you reached out to your own attorney?
I've spoken to him in the last week. He didn't mention a thing.
Well, then that's a breakdown
We-
of
we've
communication
been-
between the union and its attorney. Because as of right now, we are waiting to hear back from him. I spoke with Nick Anastasopoulos at noontime today. He still had not heard back from the union's attorney. So that's the status.
I'll send him an email and call him tonight, and I assure you, you'll probably have an answer tomorrow. You know, that's how it works, you know, speaking about communication, you've just spoken to me, you communicated that. Again, a simple email response would have gone a long way, and we could have gotten this figured out. But now,
Well, let me just speak in defense of town council. First of all, Mr. Chamberlain, I doubt the sincerity of your apology for having to be here. I think you love to be here. And,
I do not.
I think you, as many times as you've been here, you always start off with, I wish I didn't have to be. I don't believe that at all. I think you love to be here more than anything else. And I mean, this whole issue that you're making such a big deal about is the drug testing language in the contract. Is that not correct?
which we waited a year for, and thanks to you guys, the select
We
board.
accepted the fire union's language for the drug testing.
That
It was
wasn't,
put
that
in-
wasn't the fire union's
It was put in
language.
the contract.
That wasn't the fire union's language, sir.
I believe it was. That's my information.
No, that was drafted by Mr. Anastopoulos.
No, the language that got approved was the fire union's language. Actually got approved by the board, got integrated into the contract. When the integrated contract went to the union's council approximately 2 months ago, union's council then wanted to change its own language. The language that they had proposed, the union, that the board accepted, now when the contract got integrated, he wanted to change that language. And we said, it's your language.
Well, no, that was the question that was asked, and
So
And
basically.
Mr. Anastopoulos said he would go back and said, we might not be able to do it. If we need to do it in successor negotiations, so be it.
So
And we
basically,
have no objection to that, and I've stated that in emails.
so basically, here's what we have.
Mhm.
The town and the fire union had agreed to language on drug testing, which was basically the fire union's language. Then there was a change in leadership in the fire department, the union, and I guess there was a change in lawyers, and so all of a sudden, the language that you proposed was not good enough and had to be looked at, and lo and behold, here you are, trying to cast aspersions on town council and by extension on us over something that was caused by you and your attorneys.
So to go back and give you a correct history, Mr. Jakonski, what happened was that the fire union and the town agreed in principle to drug language that we waited for 2 years, which was my reason for being here in October. So my question is, and I asked this to Mr. Anastopoulos, if that was set in stone, why did we have to wait for 2 years? Why couldn't we just sign the contract? We have, both sides, both the town, the firefighters union, we have no concern for any drug use and whatsoever. We have no objections. We just had simple revisions with
Revisions to your own
certain
language.
aspects. But again,
Revisions to your own language that you...
that we had to wait 2 years for. Why?
But that aside, okay, listen.
We patiently waited, and now we're at the edge of
Captain, when you came up here, back whenever it was, several months ago.
October.
Whenever, yeah, when the contract hadn't been, I agree, it hadn't been integrated. You came up here, you voiced your concern. The contract then got integrated, all got put together with the exact language that this board had approved, the language provided by the union. That integrated contract was prepared by my office over 2 months ago. Went to union's council, which we thought was gonna be a simple, looks good, let's get it signed. Instead, union's council comes back and says, no. I wanna change that drug language. And we went back and said, that's your language, it's already been agreed to by both parties. And here we are today, still talking about that exact same thing.
Yeah,
So
and-
like Mr. Jakonski just said, this whole issue's been brought about by the union, not by this board or by my office.
it wasn't a demand, it was a request, and seeing it hasn't been finalized yet, we thought, okay, can we still, revise this?
So,
And if not, then fine, then that's it, we concede. We're just looking to end this. If we have to
Well,
add.
Your counsel hasn't conceded because the lack of communication here is not
Because
because
we were still,
excuse me,
we're still
firefighter.
waiting for answers.
You need answers from your own counsel, from the union's counsel. That's what you need answers from, not from my office or from this board. That's the problem here. We've been doing this a long time. We negotiate a lot of contracts. This has never happened. The problem here, the breakdown in communication is between the union and its own counsel.
Okay, I'll get that tonight, or by latest tomorrow, I assure you, and I will have him contact you.
Mr. Solicitor, am I correct in the understanding that the integrated contract that contained the language that was proposed by the union and accepted by the town is in the hands of the union or its representative?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, and
Mr.
again,
Chair,
this
I mean,
could have
Ed-
been,
Maybe
Oh,
there
sorry.
is some sort of a breakdown in communication between the firemen and their council, but my question is, why this conversation that's unfolding right before our eyes right now at this meeting, why couldn't this conversation have been had over a telephone? Have you reached out, even if your questions were not correct, maybe if you were misinformed, maybe you didn't understand the situation? I'm just curious why, I mean, we can inform him the same thing that we're telling him now, either over an email or over a telephone call. That's the only part of this that I understand there's confusion here, but it seems like we do have a clear answer right now. The answer that you're getting is you need to talk to your counsel, that you're not getting the correct answers. My only question is, like, why couldn't we have, it seems like you've been asking about this,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, and that you just haven't received any type of answer whatsoever.
correct.
Ed,
So
I'm
I guess
sorry-
that's all, I don't know why.
Which is why, unfortunately,
I've
I'm
got to
here, and
interrupt
my
in this,
apology
Ed,
is sincere.
and I've
Mr.
got to make this
Jaconski.
perfectly clear. In October, you came in here and made a reasonable request, and it was satisfied. The
Yes.
request was you wanted the final document in your hands. It's been in your hands, it's been in your counsel's hands, and if you had questions, you should have directed them to your counsel. Or if you're rejecting the agreement that was made and you want to reopen negotiations, you need to do that through your counsel. You don't do that by coming here. Either you're going to stand by the deal you made, or you want to start over. That's your prerogative. But we're not going to make that decision for you.
No, we have no intention of reneging on this deal, like I've stated in these emails. And again, a simple email, and our lawyer was attached to these emails. I attach everybody to them, just so there is no miscommunication, and everybody can be on the same page. He had the same questions. He didn't realize that this was a done deal. He thought that it was still open for interpretation and maybe chances at making amendments. And that's all we were asking. And honestly, if that's the case, then again, we concede. I sent that in an email.
No, but, no, it's not about.
You know?
No, it's not about conceding. All I'm saying, as an attorney, we have to walk a fine line. I can't reach out to opposing attorneys' clients. In other words, so here, Nick Anastasopoulos deals directly with the union's counsel. So in other words, he can't be telling you something. Then the union's counsel is going to say, what are you telling him for? You got to deal with me. So when you raise issues, we go right back to the union's counsel and try to resolve them. That's how we've always done it. So here, that's exactly what's been going on. Nick Anastasopoulos from my office has been dealing with the union's counsel. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. That's protocol. That's how it's done.
Yeah, I don't know. Firefighter, not a lawyer. I don't know these things.
No, I know you're not, but I just,
But you have a
it's
lawyer.
frustrating.
I do, and again, I spoke to him in the past week. It was regarding other issues. But yeah, unfortunately, he did not mention that. Would have been.
But I think we
it
can
would have been
provide
nice
them
if
with
he
an
did.
answer of,
Yeah.
you have to talk to your own lawyer versus radio silence, if that's in fact what was received.
Right.
I don't think we violate any sort of legal obligation by just telling the firefighters, you have communication issues with you have to talk to your own attorney to get these answers. We can't provide these answers. I think if just that was sent, maybe that we could have avoided what's going on here. I mean, I don't know, but it just seems like our stance was to, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have the email chain here, but it seems like our response was just kind of to ignore the request, just thinking that you would eventually figure out that you have to go to your own attorney. That's my only, I just don't, I don't know why this same message it's a simple message. Go to your own attorney to get these answers, like we can't answer these questions for you.
But Ed, we didn't ignore the request.
Okay.
We reached out to the union's attorney. I mean, I don't understand why the union would just be in communication with their own attorney. When we got that request, Nick Anastasopoulos immediately reached out to the union's attorney. That's who he's supposed to reach out to. He can't reach out. He reaches out to their attorney. That's exactly what he did as soon as we got that request. I don't know, we wouldn't handle it any differently.
And
I would
why-
like to think that the union's attorney is corresponding with their own client.
And why can't we communicate that we did that with, if somebody's reaching out, why can't we say, our counsel, talk to your counsel, there's nothing more that we can do?
I'm not sure.
End of
maybe
story.
If it didn't happen.
Absolutely, that
I
could
don't
have
know the
avoided
answer
all
to that,
this.
but it's-
Okay,
Well, it appears to me that the breakdown of communication is between the union and its own attorney, not between town council and the union.
All right, well, like I said, I'll get on the phone with him tonight, and I expect to have an answer no later than tomorrow for you guys.
It's no different than the union's, me keeping the Board of Selectmen informed. I mean, the union's attorney's not gonna send the information to the Board of Selectmen. They're gonna send it to me, and I'm gonna keep my clients informed, which is what is the union's attorney's obligation. It's not our obligation. I have no problem responding to emails like that, just providing information. This one here, I have to go back and look, but when Nick Anastasopoulos immediately reaches out to the union's attorney, you like to think everyone's in the loop, that he's corresponding with his own client.
right.
Instead of, and then, and unfortunately, this is where we are tonight, and it's unfortunate we're here, but the breakdown in communication is not on our end.
Agreed.
Seems that way.
Okay.
Anything else, Captain?
Yeah, one more thing on a positive note. As some of you may or may not know, back on Thanksgiving, our group was working, and during the Turkey Trot Road Race, a member collapsed, or a member of running the race collapsed and was unresponsive. She was resuscitated, brought back to life. She's doing excellent now. People who suffer sudden aneurysms, for the most part, they can be on the operating table and still not make it. Due to the efforts of off-duty nurses also participating in the race, Jillian O'Malley and Hillary Hart, I would like to see them recognized for the efforts they did. Their life-saving measures have, made a happy Thanksgiving and a happy Christmas for a certain family in this town, and I just don't want their efforts to go unnoticed.
Well, thank you for bringing it to our attention.
No.
Thank you.
That's
Anything
all I
else?
have. No, that's all I have.
Feel free
I
to
don't want
come
to
in
waste any more of your
anytime.
time. Okay. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
sorry for the miscommunication between our attorney.
Next item on our agenda is a resident request from West Ledge Estates requesting assistance from the Board of Selectmen for the installation of 3 streetlights in their development. Mr. Van would you identify yourself and your address? And
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Mike Finesse. I live at 10 West Ledge Road. I come here tonight representing people up the West Ledge Estates to try and come up with a solution to get our streetlights put in. That was, I guess, promised or under contract. Somewhere along the line between the original builder and the town, the lights or money that was put in escrow somehow, nobody knows what happened. So we've been patient for years now, and we're just trying to get the lights put up there. There's currently 3 cement bases with the conduit and the bolts coming out. So they're all in place, and we'd just like to know when they're gonna come or what happened or what we can do to get them put up there. There is currently, I think, 20 children up there. that would be nice to have it up there for some lighting for them.
Okay, I'm not sure you're in the right place at the right time with your request.
I've been to every board, and every board told me, come here, I'm getting the runaround.
And I
That-
don't
that-
want to
Yeah, I'm sorry.
interfere, but I'd like town council's opinion, or just guidance on this, but in case I'm steering you in the wrong direction. But this is an issue between you and the developer that you bought your homes from.
Well, the town, unfortunately, or fortunately, they accepted the road 100%. So the town should have made sure it was completed.
I'm sorry, you know, I'm perfectly willing to have the town assist and advocate on behalf of the residents, but it's not the town should or the town's fault. It's your development now, you own it, and that was a requirement on the developer to put the streetlights in. That's my understanding anyways.
Well, my understanding from the planning board here that the town should have never signed off on it if it wasn't completed.
Well, the planning board is the entity that would have signed off on
Planning board
it.
is the entity that would have signed off on it.
Yeah.
This board didn't sign off
I
on
mean,
it.
although I must say I am sympathetic to your plight. But really, it can be so frustrating when the board that signed off and told town meeting, yeah, accept this street, is now saying, oh, well, that street never should have been accepted. You gotta go see the Board of Selectmen. Just to voice my frustration, not with you. On the one hand, I would like to say, let's put up the streetlights. On the other hand, I firmly believe that there would never be another contractor that put up a development in the town of Clinton that would fulfill his responsibilities again. He'd say, "Phew, I'm just gonna walk away and the town will do it." Do they post any bond, or would that be long gone?
Yeah, I mean, for certain purposes, they would put money in escrow or bond or something. I don't believe there's any money for the streetlights. What I was told is that the developer somehow had bought the streetlights and they were in storage somewhere. I think as the residents had been told as well, and then the story changed to, no, there was money put aside for them or whatever, but we never, the DPW never got delivery of streetlights, or we didn't, I wasn't informed of any streetlights, so I feel badly, I mean, for the neighbors that are up there. National Grid is willing to come in and they would put up streetlights, but the infrastructure would have to be conducive for their lights to be able to go up. So somebody would have to take responsibility to make sure that the bases and the conduit was in shape to be able to pull wire, that they would run the wire and put up the lights.
So do we know that the infrastructure is all right, or is that in question?
Well, there is some question. I know an engineer from National Grid did go up and look at it, and but there's this development and there's another development as well. So they were looking at both. So I know Mr. Van Nast indicated that he feels that the bases at West Ledge look good. The National Grid did say there were some issues with some of the bases, but they may have been at this other development, maybe not West Ledge. I don't know. I can call and, and confirm that if there is any cost involved with West Ledge. I don't know specifically. But if those infrastructure were in place, I think if the town agreed to take on the cost of the electricity, that National Grid would install the lights, and then they would bill the town for the monthly electricity charge. But if there needs work to be done to the base, then somebody has to do that work. So whether it's the town or the developer, the hope would be the developer would come in and make it right again. But if the developer won't, then it's either the town or the residents or someone that has to.
Is the developer still in business?
I believe there is. There was some tragedy. There was a tragic event in the family, and it changed hands with the ownership. But I think that business, I know as of last year, was still in business. I don't know if it still is, but I believe they are. That is the construction company is still operating, I believe. So.
Could we have town council draft a letter to the company asking or directing them to fulfill their obligation?
Sure, we can do that. I'm assuming it's an obligation of the planning board.
Right, there's subdivision.
Yeah, if it is, if it
Yeah.
was a requirement of the subdivision.
That's my question, was if there's any, do you know, was this project approved? Did the town or the board, approve this contingent upon those lights being installed? Like, was there negotiations with the developer that said, you know, for that street, we kind of we have expectations for, you know, X, Y, Z amount of lighting, and if you want to get this approved, you're gonna have to meet this criteria?
There was certainly discussions in the planning board for that.
Right.
But there was, at some point, the planning board did approve the project, and maybe it was contingent to this work getting done. I
So-
don't know. But again, the person who presented the plan to the planning board on behalf of the company, who owned the company, the owner
Right.
of the company, tragically had an accident and, you know, is no longer with us. So now that person who made the agreement or may not have made the agreement is no longer here.
Well, the
So-
But-
agreement's made, I'm sorry.
Now, to Ed's point is, there's gotta be a document in the planning board records, and presumably, actually on the site plan that was approved, would probably show the light fixtures.
Yeah, I believe the light fixtures are on the plan, but I think that plan has been approved and signed off. So-
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I believe I seen them also. I might have a copy at home, but I'm sure they have a copy down here. It clearly states that streetlights, 3 of
Right.
them, are on that.
There's documentation that
There's
it was a
documentation,
requirement of
yes.
the project. And accepting the street doesn't alleviate them of fulfilling their legal obligations.
We could still make a demand from the town, based upon the
Right.
planning board's approved plans that they haven't adhered to. I mean, they have the obligation to put the 3 lights in. I mean, I can certainly draft that letter and send it to them, see how they respond. I mean, to Mr. Jaconski, a lot of times, we like to think there was some type of cash that was being held back, so if they don't do it, you've got the money to do that, but I don't think there's anything here.
That's, like, I mean, what recourse do we have if they just say, too bad?
To file suit against them. You know, we could put the, you know, what you do, you put the lights in, say it costs the town whatever it costs, we can file suit against them. for the
Okay,
amount.
well,
Yeah, I mean, I
Could you put that
apologize
in the
if I
letter?
misunderstood you guys, but I mean, that's the way I was told. You know, the money was there, the same thing that Mr. Ward, you know, the lampposts were in a barn somewhere, the money was in escrow,
The money was in escrow?
that was all.
Meaning like who had access to it? Okay.
The planning,
I
board,
don't
if there's
know.
an escrow account for something like that, the
Planning
planning
board
board
has
would
it.
have the approval to release it or not.
So, I mean, to me, that'd be question number 2. Does there exist a escrow account does that account exist? I mean,
Supposedly too, there's another $1,500 in an escrow somewhere that was supposed to be released to West Ledge Estates to do some landscaping and stuff too. And from what I hear, that money is still there somewhere, but I guess Mrs. Fossil, who is the new owner now, or took over, won't release that either. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. I heard it is still there. You know, so,
Well, perhaps a letter from town council
Yeah.
demanding that they fulfill their obligations will help. Absent that success there, do we know what kind of money we're talking about?
I don't know, again, I can reach out if the board's okay, I can reach out to National Grid and see specifically with West Ledge, the condition of those bases. So, you know, if a base has to be replaced or whatever, I mean, we can get that price. If Mr. Vanass indicates the bases are fine, then there may not be a cost. You know, it may be just getting the okay that we're gonna take on the responsibility.
How is Mr. Vanass gonna be able to speak to the condition of the?
He
those
just
bases?
did, and it might say to verify that.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, but
I could show you a picture of what I see there. The structure itself looks great,
Yeah.
but the wiring inside, I'm not one to
Well, that's what I
judge.
mean. I mean,
Yeah,
you're just a
exactly.
resident there. I mean,
Absolutely.
he doesn't-
But that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we're taking his word, but he seems to indicate that they're not degraded or they're not in bad shape. So if National Grid can say, yeah, we agree they're good, then that's a whole different conversation. I'm not saying Mr. Manassas is certified.
Yeah, no, not at all.
That's the way
I'm saying
I'm
that.
understanding
I
it.
mean, I haven't visually inspected them, he has,
Mm-hmm.
and he indicated that they seem, in his opinion, to be in good shape, but he's not a
Great.
contractor.
Well,
Okay.
And I'm sorry, and another one of my concerns too is that 3 bases has 4 very thick bolts going up about 5 inches. I cover mine as much as I can. All 3 of them are in somebody's yard. God forbid if a kid goes running through there
Sure.
and something lands on his head or whatever, and the wires are still hanging out. Evidently, the wires are not live, but, you know,
Well, that's a liability that the project developer is responsible for.
well, the
I'm
lawyers.
sure
will
they'll
sue
go after
everybody,
everybody.
but,
yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, I just would like to pursue this in a manner in coordination with the planning board, because it is their business. I mean, but ultimately, I would be in favor, once everything is checked into, if the town has to put up these lights, I would not be opposed to that. Then, but I think we should definitely then sue that contractor. And I don't care if it costs us $2,000. That contractor should be sued, because we can't let a contractor get away with that, because every one of them will be getting away with it in the future.
Not everyone.
Every one of them. I have a very jaundiced, after 15 years on the Board of Selectmen, I have a very jaundiced view towards contractors. No offense to you personally.
Nothing taken personally either. Well, that sounds like an avenue to proceed. If National Grid will install the poles and the bases and infrastructure is adequate, if it's not, and the cost is significant, the only way the town can pursue along the lines of doing it and suing is to get an appropriation for it
Town meeting.
at town meeting.
In the interim, you still want, I'm still gonna send them a demand. letter.
Send a
yeah.
demand letter and lawyer talk, but tell them if they fail to respond, the town's gonna execute the work and sue them to recover.
That was good lawyer talk.
Okay?
Okay, very good, thank you.
Good?
Thank you. Just one,
Ed?
just point, I mean, we might want to find out from the planning board if that approval was contingent upon the lights going in first. It seems like they are, but
No, I'll get a
you
copy.
just,
I'm
yeah,
gonna
might
get a
want to
copy.
check that. Okay.
All right. Fuller Field Commission. Matt? Come on and get comfortable.
Well, this will be quick.
Okay. Matt, a while back, you had sent an email with a couple of concerns that you wanted to have addressed or discussed with the board. One of them had to do with vacancies and the appointment process. Right now, currently, the Government Affairs Subcommittee is reviewing all of our open positions as well as people who technically their terms have expired but continue to serve until reappointed or replaced. And we're trying to come up with a proposal to present to the Board of Selectmen for review and approval. And it has to do with everybody's position, every position in town has a term attached to it. But when someone is appointed to fill an expired term, it's not necessarily the 3 years or the 5 years that the position holds. It's for the duration of that existing term. And town-wide, other than the elected positions, we've completely lost track of, you know, what date were you appointed, and did you replace somebody midterm or not? We've struggled with trying to go back, and we're in the middle of drafting a proposal to go forward, and that would be to identify positions and attach new terms to those positions going forward. And we haven't done that yet. So if I can give you any more information about that, I will, but it's in the hands of our Government Affairs Subcommittee and then the Board of Selectmen. Okay?
All right. So, is it the current commissioners is it valid for us to continue
You're-
serving?
You serve until appointed or replaced.
Okay.
We have this situation, it's not Fuller Field Commission by itself.
No, I
It's,
understand.
It's
I-
Council on Aging, it's ZBA may be, I
So
forget the, but
This is the only, we're the only appointed board, we're the only board that doesn't have anybody who is current, right? Everyone else at least has someone that looks like they're there from, 2020, but ours ended in 2019 were the last two people, which was Greg Russia and James O'Toole, but that's fine.
I think it applies to just about every board.
Yeah.
There may be one or two on a board that are still current, but I don't think
Exactly.
so.
That's right.
Because your board, the Fuller Field Commission is a 5-year term. Most of the other boards, other than, is ZBA 5 years? ZBA is 5 years. All the other ones are 3-year terms. They're supposed to be staggered, so
Okay.
they expire in a rotating basis, and nobody's current,
Okay.
okay?
All right, and then, so the second thing that I would like to bring up tonight was the Fuller Field Commission had voted on a volunteerism policy for the Fuller Field complex. And what I was hoping to do is have permission to work with town council on establishing a waiver that we can use to then, so we're able to utilize it and then take into consideration liability and whatnot.
If there's a way to do that, I'm sure town council will be willing to work with you. The questions we would have is workers' compensation, liability insurance, what happens if somebody gets hurt?
Exactly.
What kinds of equipment would they be using? Are they bringing their own equipment onto town
Exactly,
property?
and that's-
All that stuff is,
I've done a lot of research on it, and there's other municipalities that have something in existence, so I basically just grabbed a half dozen of them and then looked to frame something that works for the town.
okay?
That's
Is that it?
Well, the other thing that we would have to be concerned about is whatever's being done needs to get done. I mean, because my experience with volunteers is they're volunteers. And I mean, if something is behind the deadline, they're still volunteers.
Right.
You know, it's like years ago, the Christmas lights would go up, volunteers. They would never come down because everybody's hot to trot to be a volunteer in December when they're possessed by the Christmas spirit. But in January and February, when it's time to take the stuff down, the volunteers are not quite so interested anymore. So I just don't see volunteers as a stable workforce. So, I mean, I would have concerns about that.
Well, what I could speak to is, the $25,000 to $30,000 that volunteers had saved the town of Clinton down at Vale Street between, Little League, completely renovating that field. We had pricing from other companies that were gonna come in and do the same scope of work. That was completed. So the idea would be the scope of work would have to make sense and be logical. We're not looking to, we're not talking about building a field house down there on volunteerism, but things that can be carried out that are above and beyond what the minimum expectation of town maintenance would be is what we would look to kind of capitalize on.
I personally have witnessed some of the volunteer projects that you've initiated or participated in, and it's outstanding, and it's great. But we can't have liability or responsibility on the town's behalf on town property unless town council can find a way to clear it. And to Mike's issue of things not getting done, the projects that you're having them initiate would have to be coordinated with the facility department too. Because
That's
they have
correct.
primary responsibility for doing the improvements and the work in the park, and they would have to pick
Absolutely
up the
correct.
pieces afterwards. But I have witnessed a couple of projects that you've volunteered on and organized, and I think it's great, and if there's a way to continue that, I'd like to see that
And
happen.
that's exactly what I have found in existing policies that municipalities have, where it lays everything out, so it's crystal clear on what's expected, and that's that, but.
It depends on the task, too. I mean, to Selectman Jacoinski's point, if there's something that gets put up and then has to be taken down, I can see where that can be a problem, like to his point. Everyone's excited to do it, but then to do the cleanup after. But if it's something more simple, like a little bit of extra landscaping that the youth baseball league
Correct.
would like to do, or some sort of a baseball field maintenance, I mean, it's kind of like a one, and, you know, you have the volunteers, you do the work, and then the work's done.
That's
you know,
exactly
so,
the
right.
scope of work that.
So I think
be
if,
looking at.
working with town council and using those other policies, I think you guys can probably, I think the type of work that we're talking about is important too, and I think you can probably come up with a list of jobs or responsibilities that would be, you know, that volunteers would be, it'd be reasonable to expect volunteer help, and then there'll be other tasks where they probably wouldn't be applicable
Correct.
in that respect.
But my own sons have participated in Eagle projects, working on town property, and they've been successful too. So I wouldn't want to stand in the way of any of those types of activities going forward. But I don't want to see high school freshmen using chainsaws on a hill. You know, we have to have some kind of
I understand, I understand.
Okay, is that it for that?
That's it.
You're here for one more reason, Matt?
No, that's it. So I was hoping to table, the other two things that were on there. I think there was something about the budget and then with facilities, but I was hoping to get the appointments at least squared away first before we move on down the road, to the other
Okay,
points.
so
But I can
you
present.
don't have a budget to present tonight?
Not tonight, I do not.
Would
I
you get
received
it
an email.
in
Yeah,
as
so
soon
the
as
plan would be
possible?
Tuesday,
Okay,
according to, Mrs. Magliozzi's email that I received, that we
Okay.
would present Tuesday.
The existing board members right now on Fuller Field Commission, they're still interested in serving, right?
Everybody's
It's not like-
interested in returning.
All right,
correct.
no one's like saying, if I'm not getting appointed, I'm not involved in anything, so they're still serving, okay, all right.
Yeah, there was only, there was
there's a
one
vacancy.
resignation, which was
There's one vacancy,
Mr.
okay.
Brusha, I believe, that there was one open seat, yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right,
See you
thank
next time.
Yeah, absolutely, we'll see you on Tuesday. Thanks a lot.
Okay, the town clerk is not here this evening, but she was comfortable with, if the board was comfortable with reviewing her budget, and she'd make herself available for questions if we had any. Has anyone had the opportunity to review the town clerk's
I
budget?
think as the chairman indicated, town clerk took ill, wasn't able to come, but she said the only increase in the budget was for the extra election because of the new fiscal year with all the primaries and state elections and presidential elections and all that, so.
We're electing a president again? Okay, does anyone want more time to review the town clerk's
Well, I've
budget?
looked at it, Mr. Chairman, and I
looked at
mean,
it.
it's
Okay.
fairly uncomplicated and straightforward, and I'm fine with it if everyone else is.
Okay, we can take it under advisement and advise the town clerk that he doesn't need to come.
She's good, okay.
Thank you. Is the Council on Aging here?
Yes. Okay.
Want to give you one of these hot off the press, our next newsletter.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you.
You have the budget in front of you? Deb?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions? It's pretty straightforward.
I have none at this time,
Okay.
but what about the rest of the board?
I told the Finance Committee last night, we're very happy. We're able to do what we need to do with what we have. We only have one slight change, and that is the program coordinator has been full-time for 3 years, but 10 hours gets paid out of a grant. So we're just looking to put that 10 hours into the budget, and other than that, it's basically the same.
I just have an observation, and this is,
Yeah.
I'm new. So you have the director salary, assistant director salary, program coordinator. So that's roughly like about $117,000, but the budget for the programs is only $12,000.
Yep.
So that just either one of them is really small, or the other one is really big. It just seems like we have a large amount of money towards coordinating and directing and a small amount of money towards the actual programs themselves, unless a lot of the programs that you guys
Yeah.
run, you're able to do it like at no cost because.
Exactly.
Okay,
That's exactly what it is. The program coordinator actually does that newsletter that you have there.
Okay.
But also coordinates the speakers that come in, all of the programs that happen, enter it all in the computer. All the trips, people sign up for the trips, they sign up for the different programs. We actually just got certified as Silver Sneakers, so that's a program we don't have to pay for. We also do a Tai Chi Fit for vets that we don't have to pay for. We also have a formula grant from the state that does a lot of our fitness programs.
okay.
And a lot of the speakers that come in and programs like that, our trips pay for themselves,
Right.
so we don't have to pay for that.
So these positions are able to acquire funds?
Yeah.
Okay, I get
Yeah.
it. All right, makes more sense.
And now that we are fully staffed and everything's going great, I can start seeking other funding as well.
Okay.
So, and we did get a grant for Matter of Balance. We got a grant for a walking group. Trying to think what other grants we got recently. But we are actively seeking outside sources. One of the things that I don't want to do is increase my budget because it only hurts the seniors.
Sure,
So as long as I can continue providing what they need, I'm good.
sure. Okay. Yep, no,
And
thank
some
you.
of our services too don't cost anything, like our outreach person does SNAP, fuel assistance, housing applications, things like that, which are a service to the town.
Thank you.
I was able to take advantage of one of those services myself
See that? Getting up there.
at no cost. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, right now we have AARP is doing taxes. So we have hundreds of people that come get their taxes done every year. And like I said, we have Integrity does Medicare advisement, Shine does Medicare advisement, everything from book clubs, which costs us no money. The Mahjong, they play Mahjong, they play poker, it's a big, huge clubhouse that offers services, and we love it.
Terrific. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Thank you, Deb.
Thanks.
Next item on our agenda is the fire department budget. Oh, I'm sorry, police department budget. Sorry, chief.
As requested, I gave you the level funded and level service budget, as we have been in the past, and the increases on the level service budget, I have in there the cost of one additional patrolman. The dispatcher salaries, the only increases, the steps, and then the sick day buyback, you have some, a couple of big numbers for a couple of retirements. And then there's an increase in the new radio account for a May Day radio that's requested by the fire department, but it's in the dispatch center, so it'd be in my budget. And if we stick with the level funded budget, we would have to lay off one patrolman. And the reason being because of the increased cost for the sick day buyback for the retirements. The outside of that, everything's the same. Of course, we haven't negotiated a contract yet with the union. So none of this reflects anything that you negotiate with the union. The contract is up on June 30th.
Thank you, chief. Any questions from the board?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Chief, what does a Mayday radio do that a regular radio doesn't?
It's a different channel, Mike, that picks up when they have emergencies, and it can handle it's a separate channel, a whole separate channel, so it can handle two different, if they have two things going on at once, or if they're at another town, it's something that's needed. It can handle two different incidents at the same time.
Okay. And you believe?
It'd be a rare thing that would happen, but if it did happen, it is needed.
You'd
Yeah.
need the radio if it did happen?
Yeah, I think it's a legitimate request, yes.
All right. And the other thing, the other question I have is, are you requesting, it sounded to me like you're requesting an additional patrolman?
Yes,
So you're looking to increase the workforce?
yes.
By one.
We're at 28, we've been at 28 for probably a dozen years now. We haven't increased the staffing at all. We're kind of playing catch-up all the time. Most recently, we haven't because we haven't had any retirements. But like Bob Champagne will be retiring in a couple of months, and we won't have anyone to replace him. And we're anticipating this. I've asked Mike to request the list now so we can start the process of filling the vacancy. But just the way that civil service operates, it'll be 8 months before we get him into an academy. Then it's another 20 weeks before he's out on the street. So you're always kind of playing catch up, and we're going to have a lot of retirements coming up. There's probably 10 people over there that are eligible right now that could go out the door right now with retirements. And I don't know why they haven't. They're like me. I must be a good boss. They like working for me, so they haven't retired. But we're also busy, Mike. The way we do the job now is a lot different than we did 20 years ago. We just don't answer calls, try to handle it quickly and clear and go on to the next call. Now we go on a call, we try and take care of it. It might involve a lot more time. We're starting a program where anyone that's involved with the narcotics problem, substance use disorder, we're trying to push them into a program, and that takes a lot of man hours. We're following up on people that overdose or their activity shows us that they're involved in have a substance use disorder. We're probably going to have a team that's going to handle mental health cases so we can get people back on track with medication or getting them the help they need. And it's becoming a lot more like social services that we're being involved in. The drug task force, we used to have one officer assigned that. Now we have two. They've been very busy. I'm going to say in the past 6 weeks, we've had at least 8 trafficking cases of large quantities of fentanyl. So they've been very busy, and when I take a person off a patrol and put them into the drug task force, it's leaving patrol short,
Right.
you know?
Okay.
So I think it's time that we got that extra person. And like I said, a lot of times, he's not there because you're always replacing somebody. It seems like you're always in the process. And we're having an awful time keeping people in the dispatch. We're staffed for 9, and there's never 9 there. They're always going to either a police department job or leaving. It's hard to keep somebody. It's not really what they think it is when they get there. It's a pretty difficult job, and not everyone can do it. It's not just answering the phone and telling somebody where to go.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very involved.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I had, Mr. Chair.
So is the extra patrolman, is that in anticipation of somebody that's going to be retiring?
No,
shortly?
well, we're already anticipating that, but
Okay.
getting them on board, we could use the staffing to, like I said, I've pulled a guy off of patrol and put him into narcotics, and now we have 4 people in the detective unit. And I always used to run with 3. I have a person at the school, full-time, a school resource officer.
Sure.
And these things are expected now. Well, like I said, we're doing the job a lot differently than we have in the past, and that's all pulling people off patrol, and it's leaving patrol really, really short.
Okay.
But Chief, if we were fully staffed, everyone was trained, everyone was out of the academy, and we didn't have any retirements, and you had this additional patrolman,
He would go,
it would alleviate some overtime.
it would
due to
alleviate
vacations
some
and-
overtime, right? You gotta remember that I collected the overtime for the dispatching when I took the dispatching from fire department, so I have to pay that overtime, and there's been a lot of it at dispatching. It's to the point now where I'm always forcing people to have to work overtime, and after you force them a couple of times, then they're calling in sick because they're worn out, you know, and they're not happy, so we're trying to get the staffing level up for the dispatching too. But, yeah, it would result in less overtime, especially in the summertime when you're more active, a lot more activity. That's when you need them, and that's when everyone's on vacation. They want to be off, you know, the holidays and school vacations week, when we're the busiest, and that's when we're the shortest staffed. Just the nature of it.
Other questions from the board?
Just if these new patrolmen, maybe send them down to High Street, ticket some of the cars that are parked on High Street
Yeah,
too long.
we've been down there,
No, I know.
yeah. We've been down.
Oxford Court and
Oxford Court, we
Walnut
keep a
Street.
close eye on that for you,
Yeah.
Billy.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Okay,
You got
if nobody has any other questions, Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking your time.
You have a good night.
The next item on the agenda is the fire department, but they're not here, so we'll move on to administrative business.
Scheduled to the next meeting.
Scheduled to the next meeting,
Indicated he had training tonight, if we could,
Yep.
for next, March 4th.
along with Fuller Field. Next item on the agenda is administrative business. Town Hall use events. The Philbin Junior Scholarship Committee filed an application for use of Town Hall Fallen Memorial Auditorium for an Irish concert fundraiser to be held on Wednesday, March 11th, 2020, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the request for the Philbin Family Scholarship Fund, the Philbin Scholarship Fundraiser on March 11th, 2020.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next item is a one-day liquor license request for the same event. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the one-day liquor license for the Philbin Scholarship Fundraiser on March 11th, 2020.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Fish fry banner request. The Clinton Turnverein is requesting permission to hang a banner on town-owned property at the corner of High and Water to advertise their fish fry dinners from 2/28/20 to 4/10/20. They are open to the public on Friday nights during this period. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the allowing of the banner to be hung at the corner of High Street and Water Street.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just one discussion, I don't even know if it was Turner's, but I think last year there was a banner hung up there that stayed up there for a long time after the event was over. I have no problem approving the request. I don't know if there's, is there any way that we can?
Event is over,
Just
take it down.
Yeah, just send them the message that, like, can you get the thing down when the event's over?
We don't put a for sale sign on it.
Did we vote on this?
No.
No.
Nope.
Any other discussion?
Did we vote on it?
No, we didn't.
Oh, all right.
Any other discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Water sewer trash abatements. The Superintendent of Public Works has submitted a list of water sewer trash abatements in the amount of $47,725 from the last billing cycle for action by the Board of Selectmen. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the Superintendent of Public Works request for water and sewer abatements in the amount of $47,725.70.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. That seems very high.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, it is abnormally high. As Mr. McGowan indicated, there's one account that I think is $30,000 or roughly around $30,000 amount, which was a vacant property that had a leak that was undetected for a long period of time. And under the regulations, they're allowed a one-time abatement, so it was a high number. So that would take a lot of it out. Secondly, he indicated that there if they don't, if some of the properties have meters that are inside the building, they're not on the outside, they have to physically go in to read them. If they can't get access to the property, they send notices, and after a couple of notices, they'll send an estimated bill, which is generally conservative to make sure we collect enough money. And then the people call and say, oh, this bill is too high, come and read my meter, and then they get a true bill. So there's a number of accounts where that happened. So by taking those two issues out of the mix, it's fairly within range of what the normal abatements would be.
Now, I'm just, the $30,000 abatement, I'm not wishing to be difficult, but you said it was a slow leak that nobody noticed?
It was a leak in a vacant property that people weren't checking on the property or weren't aware of, I guess. So it must have been a big leak if it was that much.
Oh, I see. So this wasn't a leak this wasn't an amount that accrued over months and months?
No.
This was a major,
Right.
Oh, all
So
right,
a
okay.
major problem on the property that
Okay.
they didn't know until they read the meter, so.
all right.
And it wasn't observable on the interior of the building? It wasn't flooding out the building? It was?
Yeah, that I'm not sure of, yeah.
I'm just wondering if maybe we should look at the policy of especially for vacant buildings that aren't being properly monitored. Maybe we don't want to be so considerate in these abatements going forward. If it's something they could have or should have observed
Right, that's what I was
long
thinking.
before it reached this amount of water.
Okay.
It's just something
Sure, I'll
maybe
discuss that
we-
with the superintendent, sure,
Right.
maybe, like you said, there could be a modification to the policy,
Right.
to that abatement policy that the board established.
If a property owner, commercial property owner has a piece of property and they're wasting that kind of money in 1 or 2 months, they have some responsibility to be aware of it or attempt to fix it. So, any other discussion on the water sewer abatements? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Nick, okay. Did I get a second for that? I'm slipping here. I did not get so.
I'll second that.
Okay. No, we were on discussion,
seconded it,
right,
and then
all
like,
right,
yeah,
all
and
right,
then
all
like,
right.
yeah.
I'm drifting here. Set me straight, please. So that passed unanimously. Next item is a 30-day liquor license renewals. The building inspector is recommending full approval of the remaining 2020 temporary liquor license renewals held by the Old Timer and Simple Man Saloon. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the liquor license renewals as recommended by the building inspector.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
So this means that those two facilities are now up to par and,
Yes, one is 100%, and the other one, is, I guess, later this week, or they're going to be finalizing the work later this week, so the building inspector and fire chief were okay with giving them the full approval instead of another 30 days and then have to go through this again, that they feel confident that the work will be done within the week.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Request for school committee to surplus the old fire station. The school committee voted to hold on turning over the old fire station building at this time until more information is presented on the reuse ideas for this property, since it is so close to the Clinton Elementary School. Personally, I understand the concerns of the school committee over who or what could become their next-door neighbor. However, it's not the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen or the town of Clinton to draft reuse ideas for property that it's not responsible for. And I do take exception to the characterization during school committee conversation, suggesting that the town and the Board of Selectmen have a poor track record of maintaining surplus properties, when generally speaking, it's been the tradition of the school department to run buildings into the ground and then turn them over to the taxpayers. That being
now,
said,
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to pile on to that.
Okay, just let me finish.
Okay, all right, I thought you were finished with that section of what you were saying.
I do think it's in the best interest of the town of Clinton for us to pursue the request with the school committee to surplus the old fire station if they can find a comfort level in doing so. But we're not going to be drafting reuse plans for a building we're not responsible for. We're not integrating that building into our surplus property use subcommittee unless it's part of their jurisdiction to do so. Mike?
Well, I just want to say, responding to the comment about the Board of Selectmen did not have a good track record with surplus properties, reminded me of the comment that was made when we were negotiating with the school committee about the facilities director, and somebody said, well, the town doesn't have that great record with facilities, and it was pointed out that the only buildings ever torn down in the town of Clinton have been schools. I mean, as a matter, and I was on the subcommittee that handled the rehabilitation of the Corcoran School, and that was a building that was turned over to the town with the roof caving in, pigeons nesting on the top floor, and the school committee tisking about what terrible condition the Corcoran School was since they turned it over to the town. I mean, I think this is another example of that. I mean, I think we've done a good job with surplus properties. The ones I can think of are the Corcoran School, and the site of the Rite Aid was a brownfield that we RFP'd and did a TIF on, and it is now a Rite Aid. I mean, but not to get our noses too far out of joint, because I like the fellow who said that, but I think that's totally wrong. Completely and utterly and totally wrong. I mean, and if they want to keep the old fire station for another 40 years
Comes out of their budget.
and say, gee, we still can't figure out anything to do with it, I don't care. All right.
Mr.
That's
Chair,
Ed.
I would be willing, at the pleasure of the board, to attend the next school committee meeting to discuss more with them the intent of this subcommittee and answer any questions that they may have. If Russ is available, he can attend it with me, but I think maybe that gesture of just communicating a little bit further to them on I agree, we don't have any set plans. The whole point of this subcommittee is to develop the plans for the property. But I think possibly just maybe an extra conversation might set some people at ease, and maybe answering a couple questions might go a long way.
Was that a motion, Ed?
Sure, yeah.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Under discussion, I just want to say that I'm supportive of that idea. I think it would be a good thing. As I said in the beginning, I understand the school committee's concern about who would be their neighbor, but fundamental to you going to them and discussing this subcommittee that we're establishing, the whole point of it is to develop a comprehensive plan for how to deal with town properties. And we're not going to waste our time
Agreed.
Evaluating the fire station for
them to say no,
purposes.
yeah.
So if they want to surplus it, it's in their jurisdiction to do so. If they want to hang on to it and have the costs associated with that building count towards net school spending, that's fine too.
Right, and it's not, I mean, there's existing zoning laws about what can go next to a school anyway, so it's not like, they need, anything, I don't think they'd require anything special from us. There's already limitations on what you can put next to a school, so I think it was, I think it's just my instinct of this is just a case of wanting some time to think on it and just have a little bit more discussion about it. So I'd be willing to talk to them further about it.
And part of your conversation with them, you can indicate that they'd be welcome at any
Sure.
subcommittee meeting and to participate in that process.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've discussed the members of those boards. I don't know if, I can't recall, did we include a member of the school committee as?
No.
Could we Would that be a problem?
What's that?
To include a school committee representative
Oh,
on the
no, I
subcommittee.
would,
I would encourage
be
that.
very
Okay.
happy to have. yeah.
All right, so I'll also pass that message along too, that we'll welcome a member of the school committee onto that subcommittee.
With the exception of the individual who does not hold our, no,
Who
never
holds
mind.
us in such
Everyone
low
with Brenny.
esteem.
Never mind.
I'll second that.
So any other discussion on that motion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, Ed. Board and Commission's appointment process. This is still in the hands of the government subcommittee. We had hoped to have a meeting prior to this meeting, but we will schedule one soon and hopefully have recommendations to make to the board at our next meeting. Capital projects and infrastructure improvement stabilization fund guidelines. Oh, this is, Ed asked for some information on this.
No.
The town did amend the bylaws and create a process for the utilization of any surplus funds from the landfill capping project to be used to allocate it towards the capital projects and infrastructure improvement stabilization fund. Funds transferred to this account can only be used for capital projects and infrastructure improvement projects pursuant to guidelines established by the Board of Selectmen. When the town established or moved forward on the landfill capping project with the understanding that there could or would be surplus funds generated from that project, we voted at the time to establish this fund, to put the bylaw forward. The bylaw was approved at town meeting and recently approved by the Attorney General's office. The intent of the Board of Selectmen at the time was that these funds would be used for infrastructure and capital improvements that otherwise wouldn't normally be addressed by the town, like streets, water, sewer. But that was the intent of the board when we established the fund. That's not a comprehensive set of guidelines, but that was the general guideline. And we have since appropriated money from this account for the High Street project and Berlin Street, I believe. And we do need to establish more comprehensive guidelines on the use of the money, but as it stands today, any project to utilize these funds has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen prior to it going to town meeting. So, with the permission of the board, I would ask that this definition of other criteria be put in the hands of the Government Affairs Subcommittee to present to the Board of Selectmen at a later date.
Is that a motion?
Well, I can't
You
make a
can't make
motion.
a motion.
That's right, sorry.
It's not all fun and
Robert's
games
Rules of
over
Law.
here, yeah.
Okay,
Um,
well,
I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I would make a motion that the established guidelines get sent to the Government Affairs Subcommittee to be presented to the Board of Selectmen at a later date.
I'll second that.
second.
Any discussion?
Yes, I've said it at the time, and I'll just say it again. To me, the most important thing about this money, because it is likely by the end of it going to be a fairly substantial sum, is that it not be spent on personnel. Because personnel are forever. And you have a windfall, and you say, let's hire these people, the windfall goes away, you still got the people. It's very bad business, so that's one of the reasons we wanted to limit how it could be spent.
Okay, and just under discussion, the general direction was, one of our biggest issues is our infrastructure and our streets. And as long as I've been around, and some people tell me that's been a long time, we have never funded out of general revenue streets or sewer or water improvements. Any streets that get fixed are either by grants or by Chapter 90 funds, which do not go far enough to allow us to catch up on our 100-plus-year-old infrastructure. And I personally would be adamant that that money be retained specifically for that purpose, because a number of times we've had discussion on this board to seek a borrowing article to get ahead on our streets, and we've never done it. So this is the one avenue we have for that type of work, and I'd like to see us stay on that. But there's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
Just that as, in addition to the guidelines established, I don't know if there's part of that, the government affairs subcommittee, I don't know, maybe this wouldn't be appropriate for them, but what I'm trying to get at is does it make sense to have a long-term, how far out, and we know what the amount is, and this is maybe more of a Russ question, because he probably has his finger on the pulse of capital projects that need to be undertaken, as well as Chris does too. But I'd kind of be interested in like how far out, what's the long-term game plan for that account? Obviously, it's gonna be a year-to-year approval, but I'd be kind of interested in trying to formulate a plan, how we think that, that money would be best utilized. I guess what I don't want to do is just have everything just to be kind of like a year-to-year, whatever the hot project is. If possible, it'd be nice to have some sort of a long-term plan for how we would best utilize that fund.
Well, I agree with that. I think we should have a long-term capital planning plan, not specifically allocated to any funding source, but to the capital projects that we anticipate in the next 5, 10, and 20 years, and have a capital plan that we can always amend, we can always adjust, but so that we at least have placeholders and we have an understanding of how much money we have available in stabilization funds, but also what our borrowing capacity is, and where we should be headed in funding these projects.
Mike, Russ has that on his radar, doesn't he?
Well, in terms of he's putting together a
Right.
plan based on the facilities and the needs, and he would be looking at the roads or.
Oh, just for the buildings, right. So, yeah, so it would be a combination of Russ and Chris that would,
Right.
okay,
And the school department.
and the school department.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Old Home Day donation request. The Old Home Day Committee sent a fundraising letter to businesses requesting donations to assist with the costs of the annual Old Home Day event scheduled for 9/11/9/12/2020. In the past, the Board of Selectmen has contributed to this community event, and I think we are attempting, or were attempting in the last couple of budgets, to allocate more money to this type of event. I'd like to ask for representatives of the Old Home Day Committee to present to the Board of Selectmen what the costs are and what their needs are going forward to continue this event. Is that something?
I think that's quite reasonable, but I believe that Selectman Kerrigan works fairly
Oh.
closely with them.
Okay.
So we might defer
Sure.
any discussion
But we'll
until,
put it on the agenda again for the next meeting when Selectman Kerrigan's available. That okay with everyone?
Mhm.
Any committee reports?
Mr. Chairman, as requested, I got a very comprehensive list with the help of Mr. Baird from the Assessor's Office of the miscellaneous town property. Over the next several weeks, myself, Mr. Duval, Town Council, Mr. Kirridge, are gonna get together and see what we can do, okay, is getting a list of property that we're keeping forever, there's our practice, stuff like that, but some of the property is surplus, and see, throw on the best ideas what to do with it, whether auction it or whatever, and present it towards the board. Hopefully next several weeks.
This is the new surplus properties subcommittee you're referring to, not the tax title.
No, it's a
committee.
different.
Okay. Just on the list of properties that are in your domain to consider, We do have an open question on the town's interest in the Armory building. And recently, I guess there was a bulletin, the St. John's property may become available, and maybe you should be including that in your
Sure.
discussions and evaluations.
Do we, is there anyone from the town that reaches out to communicate with St. John's about any sort of possibility? I mean, now that it seems like it was, I mean, in a bulletin it was,
Yeah.
are we talking to them about that? Or?
Well, I think it, it just recently came out as an idea.
Yeah.
But I would like, if the board was okay, I would like to approach the pastor if they're, just to
Yeah.
start, open the dialogue if the board's okay with
Yeah.
that.
Yes,
Do-
absolutely.
Without talking with the board
Do-
first.
Do you need a motion for that?
No, I think
Okay.
in his role as town administrator.
Yeah.
As you're aware that I'm doing it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other subcommittee reports?
The Cable Commission got together. We were able to hire a consultant, just part-time, I think not more than, I think it was 8 hours a week is the most that he's gonna do. Chris DeSicis, he's been involved in cable access, community programming for years in the area. I think we got really lucky that he's available and willing to help us out, so he's just gonna help us get started. He's gonna craft a job description. He's going to help us work with Phil Duffy to try to locate a appropriate studio. We told him to try to focus. To start, we're planning on just renting and leasing. And we're not gonna jump right into purchasing something, but we told him to try to focus on downtown areas. If we can have a studio in a vacant storefront right now, I think that would be kind of a win-win. And then he's gonna do a couple other tasks, like work on the fundamental organization, like an org chart, and, but the biggest thing he's gonna do with the job description, it'll give us a step forward in hiring, putting a job search out for a director. That's really the main goal for, the immediate goal right now is to get a qualified director on board. So that was a big progress at the last meeting. I know we're still waiting on the contract, right, Bob, from the. Yep, that's in there, that's in their court right now. We're waiting to hear back from them. But, yeah, that's the update from the Cable Commission.
Any other subcommittee reports? Thank you, Ed. There being none, is there any discussion on the goals and objectives? Being none, that concludes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I might have, maybe I was waiting, we already do old, yeah, we already did old business, new business. So I don't know if this.
Throw it in, Ed.
Well, a couple quick questions. Mike, do you know where are we at? And I hope that you haven't been sending these to just my Selectmen account, because I haven't looked at that in about a week. I've been lazy just looking at my personal one, but is the HR search, has that committee, has anyone come together yet? Because I know we tried to do.
Just based on members' schedules, the committee wasn't able to meet this week for the school vacation week, so we're hoping to meet next week.
Okay, and the week before, we tried to get together on a Monday, and, all right. I mean, all I'd ask, this committee is just to assist the administrator, right? So, I mean, my suggestion is not to waste too much time on trying to find a perfect date when everyone can make it. If people can make it, they can make it, great, but I'd just really like to get moving on this and start looking to Chairman's comments earlier, like, the most qualified people, we don't know how long they're gonna be available, so the quicker that we can get moving on this, the better for all of us. And just one other thing, I know we've talked about it briefly with the facilities director. I know he has a long-term office optimization plan that he's working on, but I've touched on this before. In the short term, can you please ask Russ, I don't care if it's just by September, but in the short term, to just find locations for people right now that don't have offices at all, and especially like the HR person that's coming on, there's no place for that HR person to go. I mean, I don't know if there's available space downstairs. I'm not familiar with that. I know that Dr. Meyer has expressed a willingness to work with the town in opening up space at the central office. So there's space that's available, even if it's just short term. And I don't know if, I don't mean to speak for the board, so if anyone thinks otherwise, please, you know, argue with me right now and let me know, but I would hope that Russ can please find office space for some employees right now that don't have it. I don't think we have to wait for his, you know, long 1.5, 2-year plan. You know, I think that just finding some temporary space for people is a reasonable ask for him to do in a couple months. That's it.
Yeah, and he has been thinking of that and looking at it. I know the Government Affairs Committee has been in discussions on some of those issues, some of the preliminary ones with treasurer collector, but he's also looking at putting money in his budget to do some renovations to accommodate that. So it is definitely, he's aware of it, it's on his radar, so.
Yeah, that's great, but I think that in some instances, there may be a short-term solution where we don't have to wait for renovations. So I hope he can consider that. There might be a quicker way to get this done than waiting for offices to be built. If there's available space and we have people that don't have an office, I think we need to work to find a temporary spot for those people. That's all.
And I agree with that. But I also think it's important that we don't invest too heavily in putting town hall employees in a school department building. I think it's important for the interactive part of, this is coming up under the HR directors.
Sure.
I think it's important that that person be in the town hall, close enough to the department heads to interface with, even though eventually that HR person is going to be participating in the schools.
Sure.
It's primarily a town hall position, and I think someone like that should be located in this building. And if it means a $10,000 or a $20,000 investment in modifying existing space to create office space, I think we should incorporate it in the budget and push it along. But I want to second something else, the selection of the HR director. I think we're running out of time now on this round of applicants. I think, like I said, and Ed resaid, if we don't get to these people, all we're going to be left with is the bottom of the barrel. The best and the brightest are going to be picked up by other communities that are moving faster than us. So I think really is important to expedite that process. Okay? That it? Everyone?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Well, that concludes our agenda. Anyone want to make a
I
motion?
make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Ed, I had Mike print this out.